Well, howdy, folks. Now, I got a question for you. What do World War I doughboys, World War II GIs, Korean War veterans, Vietnam tunnel rats, and that one uncle who won't shut up about stopping power all have in common? They all swear by the same piece of American steel that's been putting holes in bad guys for over a century, the Colt 1911. But here's the thing that'll blow your mind. This pistol wasn't just designed to stop men, it was literally engineered to drop a 2,000-pound cow with a single shot. Yeah, you heard that right. Uncle Sam wanted anti-bovine technology, and praise gun Jesus, John Moses Browning delivered it. Look, every gun guy says their favorite pistol's the best one. Well, settle in with a cold one here, because I'm about to tell you why the 1911 ain't just another gun, it's the gun that literally wrote the book on how every modern pistol should work. See, most folks think the 1911 got its name because it was adopted in 1911, and they'd be right. But what they don't know is a wild story of how we got there. This pistol has more American grit baked into it than a 4th of July barbecue, and it all started with a problem that was, well, pretty dang American in how we solved it. But before I tell you about Uncle Sam's cow shooting science experiment, and yes, that's a real thing that happened, let me paint you a picture of just how revolutionary this pistol really was. In 1911, most folks were still carrying revolvers that took longer to reload than it takes to order at a Starbucks. Meanwhile, Browning was over here designing a semi-automatic pistol that could put 7 rounds of 45 ACP downrange faster than you could say yeehaw. This wasn't just an upgrade here, folks. This is like going from a horse and buggy to straight a Mustang GT. Yeah. And the best part is over 110 years later, we're still making these things because, well, perfection doesn't need much improving. Now, let me tell you about the Philippine-American War. Yes, because this is where our story gets interesting, and by interesting, I mean violently American in the way only a turn-of-the-century military procurement story can be. All right, get this. It's 1899, the American forces are going to be toe-to-toe with Filipino rebels who had what you might call a pharmaceutical advantage. These fellas were doing enough opium to make a Keith Richards concert look like a church social. We're talking about warriors so hopped up that getting shot was more of a minor inconvenience than a fight stopper. Now, our boys here were carrying the Colt New Army revolver in .38 caliber, a fine gun for its time, but about as effective against a drugged-up rebel as a stern talking to. Soldiers were putting multiple rounds center mass and watching these guys keep coming like something out of a zombie flick, except zombies weren't invented yet, so they just called it Really Bad Tuesday. So good old Uncle Sam, being Uncle Sam, looked at this situation and said, well, obviously we need a bigger bullet. Not better tactics or different strategy. Nope, just bigger bullet. Because that's how we roll in America, folks. When in doubt, add more firepower. But here's where things get absolutely wild. The Army didn't just guess at what size bullet they needed. No. They decided to conduct what they call the Thompson-Lagarde test, which sounds all scientific and official until you realize what it actually was. A bunch of military guys shooting cows to see what the smallest bullet was that would drop a 2,000-pound bovine with one shot. I'm not making this up, folks. Somewhere in a government filing cabinet, there's probably a report titled Optimal Caliber for Bovine Neutralization with your tax dollars stamped all over it. Now you might be thinking, Buck, that seems like overkill for a 150-pound bad guy, and you would be right. Except the Army's logic was bulletproof, pun intended. They figured if it would stop a cow, it'll definitely stop a person. And honestly, that's a kind of over-engineering that makes me so dang proud to be an American. Think about it. A 2,000-pound piece of livestock versus a 150-pound troublemaker. That's like bringing a bazooka to a water balloon fight, which coincidentally is exactly the kind of overwhelming superiority our military prefers. The result of this scientific experiment, and I am using air quotes here because shooting cows for ballistics data is peak 1900s military thinking, determined that the next service pistol needed to be chambered in .45 caliber, not 44, not 46, 45, because apparently cows are very specific about their ballistic requirements. And that's how John Moses Browning got the specs for what would become the most iconic handgun in American history. The man was literally told, make it cow-proof. He delivered a pistol so effective it's still dropping bad guys and maybe cows over a century later. Now let me tell you about this John Moses Browning guy, because this man was like the Nikola Tesla of things that go bang. Born in 1855 in Utah Territory, back when Utah was still figuring out if it wanted to be a state, Browning was surrounded by firearms from day one. His daddy was a blacksmith and a gun designer, so little John was probably teething on gun barrels. By age 7, this kid was working in his father's shop, and by the time he was done learning, he'd surpass the old man like a hot rod passing a horse and buggy. We're talking about a guy who would go on to design the M2 machine gun, the Auto 5 shotgun, and pretty much every other iconic American firearm you can think of. But the 1911, that was his masterpiece. When the Army came to him with their cow-stopping requirements, Browning didn't just design a gun, he engineered a solution. And not just any solution, but one so fundamentally sound that we're still using the same basic design today. Think about that for a minute. In 1911, the Wright brothers had just figured out how to fly 8 years earlier. Henry Ford was still hand-cranking Model Ts. Browning designed a pistol so advanced that it would serve as America's primary sidearm for the next 74 years without any major changes. That's like designing a smartphone in 1911 that we'd still be using today. The man wasn't just ahead of his time, he was ahead of several times. Now let's talk about what made the 1911 so revolutionary, because this wasn't just a bigger revolver, this was a complete reimagining of what a handgun could be. First off, just look at this thing. Even today, over 110 years later, the silhouette is instantly recognizable. That's not an accident, that's what happens when the form follows function so perfectly that you create something timeless. The 1911 introduced features that we take for granted today, but were absolutely mind-blowing in 1911. Magazine in the grip? Revolutionary. Slide-operated, semi-automatic action? Game-changing, baby. Integrated grip safety and manual thumb safety? Browning was thinking about safety before OSHA was even a twinkle in some bureaucrat's eye. But here's a real genius. The tilting barrel lockup system. Most early semi-autos were finicky as a cat in a thunderstorm, jamming if you even looked at them wrong. Browning's design was so robust that soldiers could field strip it blindfolded, clean it with whatever they had handy, and still run like a Swiss watch. And let's talk about that 45 ACP cartridge, because Browning didn't just adapt an existing round, he designed the ammunition specifically for the gun. The 45 automatic Colt pistol was engineered to deliver maximum stopping power while being reliable in a semi-automatic action. It's like the custom-tailored suit, except the suit was made of lead and copper and traveled at 830 feet per second. The result? A pistol that could put 7 rounds of man-stopping power downrange as fast as you could pull the trigger. Reload in seconds instead of minutes, and you know what? Just do it all while being more reliable than your average politician's promise. When World War I kicked off, the 1911 got its first real test, and let me tell you, it passed with flying colors. American doughboys were carrying these things into the trenches of France, and the Germans quickly learned to respect that distinctive 45 ACP bark. Now, the Army back then had only produced about 70,000 of these pistols by the time we entered the war in 1917. That sounds like a lot, till you realize we were about to send over 2 million men to Europe. That's like bringing a six-pack to a frat party. Technically, you did bring beer, but you're gonna need more. But here's the beautiful thing about American manufacturing. When we need something, we make it happen. By the end of the war, Colt had cranked out nearly 650,000 of these pistols. That's going from we need more guns to everybody gets a gun in about 18 months. The soldiers loved them. You'll find more photos of doughboys proudly posing with their 1911s than you'll find of them with just about any other piece of equipment. These weren't just tools, they were confidence boosters. When you were carrying a 1911, you knew you had 7 chances to solve any problem that comes your way. The most famous 1911 user from World War I was Sergeant Alvin York, who used his trusty 45 to take down 6 German soldiers charging his position. When his rifle ran dry, he switched to the 1911 and proceeded to demonstrate why you don't mess with a Tennessee mountain boy who knows how to shoot. Now, if World War I was the 1911's debut, then World War II was its star and role. By 1941, America had learned from the last war and had nearly 3 million 1911s ready to go. From the beaches of Normandy to the jungles of the Pacific, the 1911 was there. Let me tell you, this pistol saw some action. Paratroopers jumping into occupied France carried them. Marines island hopping across the Pacific had them on their hips. We're talking tank crews, pilots, officers, and enlisted men. Everybody wanted a 1911. But here's what really cemented the 1911's legend. Unlike any other military equipment that was restricted after the war, civilians could buy surplus 1911s. Want a piece of history that helped win the war? Walk down to your local sporting goods store and pick one up for a reasonable price. That meant every American who wanted one could own the same pistol that helped liberate Europe and defeat the Japanese Empire. Try doing that with a Sherman tank or a P-51 Mustang. The 1911 became America's pistol, not just a military's. And I'll say this, it earned that status. These pistols went through hell and kept working. They were dropped in mud, soaked in salt water, frozen in foxholes, and baked in desert heat. They were clean with whatever soldiers could find and maintained with improvised tools, and they kept on working. Now, most guns here would call it a career after helping win 2 world wars, but the 1911 was just getting started. Korea, Vietnam, countless smaller conflicts. Wherever American forces went, the 1911 went with them. By the 1980s, the 1911 had been America's primary sidearm for 74 beautiful years. Think about that. 4 generations of American servicemen learned to shoot on the same basic design. Grandfathers who carried them into World War II were teaching grandsons who would carry them into Vietnam. But all good things must come to an end. And in 1985, the military officially adopted the Beretta M9 to replace the 1911. The reasons here were practical. The M9 held 15 rounds versus the 1911's 8. It was lighter. NATO standardization meant we'd all be using 9mm. But here's the thing about the 1911. It didn't go quietly into retirement, no sir. Special Forces units took one look at the M9 and said, thanks, but we'll keep our 45s. They knew that when you absolutely, positively needed to stop a threat with one shot, you wanted that 45 ACP to do the talking. And they were pretty right. Even today, many special ops units carry modernized 1911s. The M45A1 is basically a 21st century version of the Browning's original design, proving that good ideas never go out of style. So why, in an age of polymer-framed, high-capacity striker-fired pistols, does the 1911 still command respect? Well, let me break it down for you. First, there's the trigger. Properly tuned 1911 trigger is like freaking butter. Smooth, crisp, and predictable. It's a gold standard that every other pistol trigger is measured against. When shooters want the best possible stock trigger, they reach for a 1911. Second, there's the accuracy. The long sight radius, the solid steel construction, and the tight tolerances that all add up to a pistol that can shoot better than most people can hold. In the right hands, a 1911 can put rounds through the same hole at 25 yards. And then, my friends, there's the stopping power. Yeah, I know the 9mm versus 45 ACP debate has been going on longer than most marriages, but here's the thing. 45 ACP was designed specifically to stop threats immediately. It's not about capacity, it's about making each shot count. But here is the real reason the 1911 still rules. It's got soul. You pick up a 1911, you're not just holding a gun, you're holding over a century of American history. You're connected to every soldier who carried one, every police officer who trusted their life to one, and every citizen who defended their family with one. And the beauty is, you can still buy one today. Colt still makes them, so do dozens of other manufacturers. I mean, you can get a basic GI model that's virtually identical to what soldiers carried in World War II, or you can get a custom competition gun that costs more than some cars. Today, the 1911 ain't just surviving, it's thriving. Walk into any gun store and you'll see more 1911 variants than you can shake a stick at. Full size, compact, officer's model, N45 ACP, 9mm, 10mm, 38 Super. If you can dream it, somebody's probably making it. And that's the beautiful thing about Browning's design. It was so fundamentally sound it can be adapted to just about anything. You want a concealed carry gun? There's a 1911 for that. Want a competition race gun? There's a 1911 for that. Want something that looks exactly like what your granddad carried in the Pacific? You guessed it, there's a 1911 for that too. The aftermarket support is absolutely bonkers. You can customize a 1911 more than a hot rod, I'm serious. Triggers, barrels, sights, grips, finishes. If it exists on a 1911, somebody out there is making an upgraded version of it, like Legos for grown-ups, except these Legos here can punch the holes in paper at 50 yards away. Now let's talk for a minute competition shooting, because this is where the 1911 really shows its class. Walk into any serious pistol competition, USPSA, IDPA, Bullseye, you're going to see 1911s everywhere. Why? Because when accuracy matters more than capacity, when trigger control is everything, I'm saying when you need to make every shot count under pressure, serious shooters are going to reach for a 1911. It ain't nostalgia, it's performance. I've seen guys with $5,000 custom 1911s shooting groups so tight, you can cover them with a quarter at 25 yards. Now, that's not the gun doing all the work here, but it sure ain't hurting. When you got a platform this solid, this proven, this refined over more than a century, you're starting with some serious advantage. Now, let's be honest, okay? There's something deeply satisfying about outgunning some young buck with his plastic, fantastic Wonder 9 using a design that's older than your great-grandpappy. It's like beating a Tesla in a '69 Mustang. Sure, the new stuff has its advantages, but style points dang well matter. So here we are. Why is the Colt 1911 the one sidearm to rule them all? Well, let me count the ways. It's got over 110 years of proven performance in every single environment on Earth. It's been carried by heroes, legends, and regular folks who just wanted the best. It's influenced every modern pistol design that came after it, and it's still being manufactured by dozens of companies because the demand never went away. But more than that, the 1911 represents something uniquely American. The idea that if you're going to do something, you might as well do it right the first time. Browning didn't just design a gun, he designed the gun, the template, the gold standard. When other countries wanted to build a service pistol, they looked at the 1911. When gun designers wanted to create something new, they started with what Browning had already figured out. The 1911 didn't just set the bar, it is the bar. And here's the crazy thing. After all these years and all these innovations, all these improvements in modern pistol design, the 1911's still here, still relevant and still desired. It's still got respect. That's not luck, folks, that's excellence. Now, I'll be straight with you. I'm not saying the 1911 is perfect for everyone. It's heavy, holds fewer rounds than modern pistols, and it requires more maintenance than some folks are willing to deal with. And if you can't handle the recoil of 45 ACP, well, there are other options out there. But if you want a pistol with soul, with history, and a trigger that breaks like a glass rod, and accuracy that'll make you look like a better shooter than you actually are, fella, the 1911's calling your name. There's something about the weight of it in your hand, the way the slide cycle, the authoritative thump of the 45 ACP leaving the barrel. It's not just shooting, it's participating in over a century of American firearms tradition. Every time you rack that slide, you're doing the same motion that countless American servicemen did before going into harm's way. Every time you line up the sights, you're using the same sight picture that helped win 2 world wars. That ain't just history, that's heritage. But there you have it, folks, the story of why the Colt 1911 is the one sidearm to rule them all. From cow shooting science experiments to modern competition circuits, from the trenches of France to the mountains of Afghanistan, this pistol has earned its place in history. It's not just a gun, it's a piece of American engineering excellence that stood the test of time. It's proof that when you get the fundamentals right, when you build something with integrity and purpose, it doesn't just survive, it thrives. Now, I know some of you are sitting here thinking about that polymer pistol in your safe, wondering maybe it's time to add some steel and history to your collection, and you know what? I think you should. Whether it's a basic GI model or a custom shop masterpiece, every gun owner should experience what John Moses Browning created. But here's the thing, once you shoot a good 1911, once you feel that trigger break and watch those rounds go exactly where you aimed them, you're gonna understand why this design has lasted over a century. You're gonna get it. But my friends, if you enjoyed learning about America's greatest pistol, hit that like button harder than a 45 ACP bullet hitting a target. Subscribe for more deep dives into firearms that shaped our history, and drop a comment below. I want to hear about your 1911 experiences. Give me your favorite models, or if you think I'm completely wrong about something. Until next time, keep your powder dry, your groups tight, and remember, they don't make them like they used to, except when it comes to 1911. They still make those exactly like they used to, and that's exactly how we like it. Y'all come back now, you hear?